In the heart of a sprawling galactic empire, where stars were mere specks against an endless void and civilizations thrived on the edge of technological marvels, there existed a planet known only as HFY. This world was not like others. Its surface shimmered with iridescent hues that shifted under twin suns, casting shadows in colors no human eye had evolved to see naturally. The air itself seemed alive, humming faintly with energy that defied explanation, as though it carried whispers from another dimension. It was here, amidst this alien splendor, that humanity's finest warriors gathered for what they called the Apex Games, a brutal spectacle designed to assert dominance over both their own kind and any species foolish enough to challenge them. The arena stood at the center of it all, a colossal structure carved into the living rock of HFY's terrain. Its walls pulsed with veins of bioluminescent crystal, glowing brighter with each cheer or scream from the audience perched high above. These spectators came from every corner of the galaxy. Insectoid beings with multifaceted eyes clicking in excitement, reptilian creatures draped in ceremonial silks, and even humans adorned in armor polished to mirror-like perfection. They filled the stands, their collective anticipation crackling through the atmosphere like static before a storm. Each session promised bloodshed, triumph, and humiliation, all broadcast across interstellar networks to feed the insatiable hunger of millions who watched from afar. Among those chosen to compete was Kale, a human warrior whose reputation preceded him. Born on Earth but forged in battles fought light years away, he bore scars etched deeply into his skin, not just physical ones but emotional wounds that festered beneath his stoic exterior. He moved through life with a singular purpose: survival. Yet, despite his hardened demeanor, there was something magnetic about him, an aura of quiet defiance that drew both admiration and disdain. His presence alone commanded respect, though few dared approach him outside the confines of combat. Kale's opponent on this day would be unlike anything he'd faced before. Word spread quickly among the assembled crowd. Murmurs rippled through the tiers like waves crashing against jagged cliffs. She emerged slowly from the shadows cast by one of the towering archways leading into the arena, a figure so imposing she seemed almost mythological. Her exoskeleton gleamed dully under the shifting lights, segmented plates overlapping seamlessly across her elongated frame. Antennae twitched atop her head, sensing vibrations in the air, while her mandibles clicked softly, emitting low-frequency sounds imperceptible to most but unmistakably menacing nonetheless. She was the queen, leader of a hive-minded species long feared throughout the cosmos. Stories spoke of her ferocity, how she could command legions with nothing more than pheromones secreted from glands hidden within her thorax. But these tales also whispered of something else, intelligence far surpassing simple instinct. Observers claimed she strategized, adapted, learned. And now, here she stood, ready to face Kale in single combat, her very existence challenging everything humanity believed about its place among the stars. As the two adversaries locked gazes, the weight of expectation hung heavy in the air. For Kale, this wasn't merely another fight, it was validation. A chance to prove himself not just as a survivor but as someone capable of conquering fear itself. As for the queen, her motives remained shrouded in mystery, unreadable behind compound eyes reflecting countless fragments of light. What drove her? Was it pride, duty, or perhaps something deeper, primal? Whatever the answer, neither side showed hesitation as they circled each other, muscles coiled tightly like springs awaiting release. And then, without warning, the battle began. The queen struck first, lunging forward with unnatural speed, her movements fluid yet deliberate. Kale barely managed to sidestep her initial assault, feeling the rush of displaced air as her massive claw grazed past his shoulder. Adrenaline surged through his veins, sharpening his senses, heightening awareness of every detail. The texture of the ground beneath his boots, the metallic tang of sweat mingling with a charged atmosphere. He retaliated swiftly, driving his blade upward toward her exposed abdomen. But instead of connecting cleanly, the weapon glanced off her chitinous armor, sending sparks flying in all directions. Undeterred, Kale pressed onward, using momentum to close the distance between them once more. This time, he aimed lower, targeting joints where flexibility might compromise strength. However, the queen anticipated his strategy, pivoting gracefully out of reach before launching another counterattack. Her tail whipped around like a whipcord, forcing Kale to leap backward to avoid being impaled. Landing awkwardly, he stumbled briefly, giving her enough time to unleash a viscous stream of acidic saliva directly onto his face. Pain exploded across Kale's features as the corrosive substance seared flesh and tissue alike. Instinctively, he dropped to one knee, hands clawing desperately at his visor in an attempt to wipe away the burning liquid. Vision blurred, he relied solely on sound and touch to navigate the chaos unfolding around him. Somewhere nearby, he heard the crowd erupt into frenzied cheers, their voices blending into a cacophony of approval and disgust. Through gritted teeth, Kale forced himself back onto his feet, blinking rapidly to clear remnants of the acid from his eyes. Despite the agony coursing through his body, determination burned hotter still within him. With renewed resolve, he tightened his grip on the hilt of his sword, channeling raw fury into calculated aggression. Feinting left, he feigned weakness, hoping to lure the queen into making a fatal mistake. Predictably, she took the bait, advancing confidently until she found herself dangerously close to her prey. Seizing the opportunity, Kale swung his blade in a wide arc, catching her midsection with enough force to stagger her momentarily. But victory proved elusive. Even wounded, the queen refused to yield, regaining composure faster than expected. She retaliated ferociously, driving Kale backward step by painful step. Every strike landed with bone-jarring impact, testing limits previously thought unbreakable. Still, amidst the relentless onslaught, Kale detected subtle shifts in her technique, patterns emerging from chaos, revealing vulnerabilities he could exploit if given half a chance. Time stretched impossibly thin, each second dragging longer than the last. Fatigue crept steadily into Kale's limbs, threatening to overwhelm endurance honed through years of relentless training. Yet surrender remained unthinkable. Not here. Not now. Summoning reserves of willpower few possessed, he dug deep, pushing beyond perceived boundaries until desperation transformed into clarity. Suddenly, inspiration struck, a risky maneuver requiring split-second timing and absolute precision. Drawing upon lessons learned during countless skirmishes, Kale executed a series of rapid maneuvers designed to disorient rather than incapacitate. Ducking beneath sweeping claws, dodging snapping jaws, he danced perilously close to death's embrace, waiting patiently for the perfect opening. When it finally came, a fleeting moment when the queen overextended herself pursuing an illusory target, he seized it without hesitation. With a roar born of equal parts rage and triumph, Kale plunged his blade deep into the soft tissue beneath her carapace, twisting viciously to ensure maximum damage. A gurgling shriek erupted from the queen's throat as she collapsed heavily onto the arena floor, convulsing violently as life drained inexorably away. Blood pooled darkly beneath her twitching form, staining pristine stone crimson. For a brief instant, silence reigned supreme. Then, gradually, applause swelled from the stands, growing louder and more frenetic until it threatened to drown out coherent thought entirely. Spectators rose en masse, roaring approval mixed liberally with shock and awe. Some cheered wildly, pumping fists skyward, others clutched companions tightly, sharing gasps of disbelief. Amongst such pandemonium, Kale stood motionless, chest heaving erratically as reality sank in fully. Victory tasted bittersweet, tainted by knowledge of what lay ahead. Turning slowly, he surveyed faces illuminated starkly by artificial lights overhead. Recognition flickered briefly in some gazes, acknowledgement of prowess demonstrated today. Others regarded him coldly, calculating future threats posed by such formidable skill. Regardless of individual reactions, however, one truth remained undeniable. Today marked beginning of something irrevocable. Whether hero or villain depended largely upon perspective, and tomorrow held infinite possibilities either way. Amidst the deafening roar of the crowd, Kale's senses remained razor-sharp, attuned to every shift in the atmosphere. The adrenaline coursing through him had not yet ebbed, leaving his body taut with residual tension. He could feel the weight of thousands of eyes fixed upon him, dissecting his every movement, analyzing his posture for signs of weakness or arrogance. Though victorious, he knew better than to let his guard down. Not here, not ever. The queen's lifeless form sprawled at his feet served as a grim reminder of how fleeting triumph could be in this merciless arena. His gaze swept across the stands, lingering momentarily on clusters of alien dignitaries seated in opulent boxes reserved for the elite. Their expressions ranged from impassive masks of indifference to barely concealed contempt. To them, Kale was little more than a pawn in a grander game, a disposable asset meant to entertain and intimidate. Yet there was something else lurking beneath their studied composure: curiosity. Perhaps even fear. After all, he had done what many considered impossible. He had bested the Queen, a creature revered and reviled in equal measure across the galaxy. Her defeat signaled more than just personal glory. It challenged preconceived notions about hierarchy and power. Shifting his attention downward, Kale noticed smaller groups of spectators positioned closer to the arena floor. Here, emotions ran raw, less filtered by decorum or diplomacy. Reptilian traders hissed excitedly amongst themselves, tails lashing rhythmically against polished seats. Insectoid beings clicked mandibles together in patterns too complex for human ears to decipher fully. And scattered throughout, human representatives leaned forward eagerly, whispering conspiratorially behind cupped hands. Each reaction added layers to the tapestry of intrigue surrounding him, weaving narratives that would ripple outward long after today's events faded from memory. Yet amidst this sea of faces, one particular figure caught Kale's eye. A lone humanoid cloaked entirely in shadow despite the glaring brightness overhead. Unlike others who reveled openly in the spectacle, this individual remained perfectly still, observing silently from beneath a hood pulled low over their features. Something about their presence unsettled Kale profoundly, stirring instincts honed through years of survival. There was no malice evident, no overt threat, but the sheer intensity of their focus unnerved him nonetheless. It felt as though they saw straight through his carefully constructed facade, peeling back layers of bravado to expose vulnerabilities buried deep within. Breaking eye contact reluctantly, Kale refocused on immediate concerns. Despite outward appearances of calm, internal turmoil churned relentlessly. Memories of past battles resurfaced unbidden, ghosts haunting the periphery of consciousness. Faces of fallen comrades flashed vividly before his mind's eye, their voices echoing faintly in the recesses of memory. Guilt gnawed persistently at his resolve, questioning whether any amount of success justified the cost paid along the way. Had he truly earned this moment of acclaim, or was it merely another hollow victory built upon foundations of loss and sacrifice? Physical pain compounded mental anguish, serving as constant reminders of fragility masked by strength. Acid burns continued to throb insistently, sending sharp jolts of discomfort radiating outward. Each breath rasped harshly against damaged tissue lining his throat, further exacerbating unease already simmering below the surface. Yet none of these afflictions compared to the crushing burden of expectation weighing heavily upon shoulders weary from carrying burdens far greater than mere accolades. As celebration reached fever pitch around him, Kale retreated inwardly, seeking solace amidst chaos swirling uncontrollably outside. Thoughts drifted inevitably toward home, a distant concept grown increasingly abstract over time spent traversing unfamiliar worlds. Earth called faintly to him, whispering promises of peace and belonging denied thus far. Would returning someday offer redemption sought desperately yet eluding grasp consistently? Or would scars accumulated render assimilation impossible regardless of intent? Unbidden, images of loved ones surfaced fleetingly, faces frozen forever in moments captured prior to departure. Parents aging gracefully despite hardships endured, siblings forging paths uniquely theirs, friends laughing freely under skies untainted by war. All sacrificed willingly for dreams pursued relentlessly elsewhere. Bittersweet nostalgia mingled uncomfortably with present realities, creating discordant symphonies playing ceaselessly inside his head. Meanwhile, external pressures mounted exponentially. Officials stationed near entrances gestured urgently, signaling imminent summons likely involving formal recognition followed closely by strategic discussions regarding next steps. Diplomatic protocols demanded participation graciously extended regardless of personal inclinations. Refusal invited consequences potentially dire depending upon whims governing current regimes holding sway over proceedings unfolding spectacularly before enraptured audiences worldwide. Caught precariously between worlds colliding violently within and without, Kale wrestled fiercely against encroaching despair threatening engulfment complete. Balancing act required finesse unparalleled tested repeatedly amid circumstances beyond control entirely. Choices made henceforth shaped destinies irrevocably altered permanently. Burden bearer accepted willingly bore cross carried dutifully till journey ended conclusively definitively ultimately. As the officials approached, their movements deliberate and measured, Kale braced himself for what was to come. He recognized the insignias on their uniforms, symbols of authority wielded by those who dictated the rules of engagement in this unforgiving theater of war and spectacle. Their presence signaled not just acknowledgement of his victory but also the beginning of negotiations that would determine the trajectory of his future. These were men and women who saw him not as a person but as a tool, an instrument to be wielded strategically in the ongoing chess match of intergalactic politics. One of them stepped forward, extending a hand adorned with rings embedded with gemstones that glimmered unnaturally under the arena lights. His voice carried a tone of practiced warmth, yet Cale detected the steel beneath the velvet. "Warrior," the official began, inclining his head slightly in a gesture of respect that felt more performative than genuine, "you have done what few believed possible. Your triumph today will echo across systems, rewriting narratives we thought immutable." Cale nodded curtly, keeping his expression neutral. He had learned long ago that words spoken in arenas such as this often carried double meanings. Promises wrapped in veils of obligation, praise laced with strings attached. Still, he listened intently, knowing that understanding the subtext was as crucial as hearing the actual message. "You've proven yourself not only as a fighter but as a symbol," the official continued, pacing slowly before Cale, his gaze never wavering. "A symbol of resilience, adaptability, and, dare I say, hope. Hope that humanity can rise above its limitations, that we are capable of standing toe-to-toe with even the most fearsome adversaries." The word hope lingered in the air like a phantom, its weight heavier than it should have been. Cale clenched his jaw, resisting the urge to scoff. Hope was a luxury he could scarcely afford, a fragile illusion shattered too many times to count. Yet he understood its value in the grand scheme of things, a rallying cry for those watching from afar, a narrative thread woven into the propaganda machine that kept civilizations complacent and compliant. "But such symbols require stewardship," the official added, pausing to let the implications sink in. "Your actions today have elevated you beyond the realm of mere combatant. You are now a figurehead, a representative of humanity's potential. And with that comes responsibility." Responsibility. The word struck Cale like a hammer blow, resonating deeply within him. Responsibility for what? For upholding ideals he barely believed in? For perpetuating cycles of violence masquerading as progress? For becoming exactly what he had sworn never to be, a pawn in someone else's game? Before he could respond, another official joined the conversation, her voice softer but no less commanding. "We must discuss your next steps," she said, her eyes scanning the crowd momentarily before returning to Cale. "There are factions within the Council who see your victory as an opportunity to renegotiate treaties, to leverage your prowess in ways that could shift balances of power significantly." Cale's pulse quickened. He had suspected as much. Victories like his were rarely celebrated purely for their own sake. They were stepping stones toward larger ambitions, tools used to manipulate alliances and rivalries. Already, he could imagine the debates raging behind closed doors, how best to deploy him, where to send him next, which enemies to pit him against to maximize gain. "And what if I refuse?" he asked quietly, his voice slicing through the din like a blade. The question hung in the air, heavy with implications neither side wanted to confront directly. The first official stiffened slightly, his smile faltering for the briefest moment before regaining its practiced smoothness. "Refusal is always an option," he replied diplomatically, though the edge in his tone betrayed irritation. "But consider the consequences carefully. You are not merely a warrior anymore. You are a beacon. Turning away from that role would not only discredit you personally but could undermine everything your victory represents." It was a thinly veiled threat, couched in language designed to appear reasonable. Cale understood the stakes clearly. They were offering him a choice, but it was one framed within parameters they controlled. Accept their terms, or face isolation and irrelevance. Either path promised hardship, but the latter ensured obscurity, a fate worse than death for someone who had fought so hard to leave a mark. As the officials continued outlining plans and contingencies, Cale's thoughts drifted again to the cloaked figure he had noticed earlier. That silent observer had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only questions. Who were they? An agent of a rival faction? A sympathizer seeking to warn him of unseen dangers? Or perhaps something far more enigmatic, a player operating outside the established order altogether? Whatever the case, their presence hinted at complexities Cale had yet to fully grasp. The political landscape of the Galactic Empire was rife with intrigue, alliances shifting constantly like sand dunes sculpted by ceaseless winds. Trust was a rare commodity, loyalty even rarer. Every decision he made moving forward would ripple outward, affecting not just his own fate but potentially the lives of countless others caught in the web of interstellar machinations. The officials concluded their briefing with platitudes about honor and duty, urging Kale to rest and recuperate before embarking on whatever missions awaited him. As they departed, leaving him alone once more, Kale allowed himself a moment of vulnerability. He sank to one knee, pressing gloved fingers against the cool stone of the arena floor. Beneath his touch, faint vibrations hummed softly, remnants of the battle still resonating within the very fabric of the structure. It was a reminder of how fleeting triumph could be, how quickly glory gave way to new challenges demanding resolution. Standing again, Kale turned his gaze skyward, toward the twin suns casting their kaleidoscopic glow over Arcs 7. Somewhere beyond their brilliance lay answers he desperately needed, truths obscured by layers of deception and manipulation. If he hoped to navigate the treacherous waters ahead, he would need allies, resources, and most importantly, clarity of purpose. But finding those things would require risks greater than any he had taken thus far. With a final glance at the corpse of the queen lying prone nearby, Kale exhaled sharply, steeling himself for what lay ahead. Victory had brought him here, but survival depended on choices yet to be made. As Kale stood amidst the aftermath of his triumph, a sudden commotion erupted from the far end of the arena. Spectators who had been cheering wildly moments earlier now recoiled in shock, their collective gasps rippling through the air like a tidal wave. Turning sharply, Kale saw what had caused the disturbance. A shimmering portal was forming at the edge of the arena floor, its edges crackling with an otherworldly energy that made the bioluminescent crystals embedded in the walls seem dull by comparison. From this rift emerged another figure, one whose arrival sent shivers down even Kale's battle-hardened spine. It was not humanoid, nor did it resemble any species he had encountered before. The creature was tall and sinuous, its body composed of shifting, translucent layers that refracted light into fractal patterns. Its eyes, if they could be called that, were voids of darkness, pulling at the surrounding illumination as though consuming it whole. But what truly unsettled Kale was not its appearance. It was the aura of authority it exuded, a presence so commanding that even the officials nearby hesitated to approach. The being moved with deliberate slowness, each step resonating deeply within the arena as if the ground itself trembled beneath its weight. When it finally stopped, mere meters away from Kale, it raised an elongated appendage, pointing directly at him. From its formless mouth came a sound unlike anything Kale had ever heard, a series of tonal frequencies layered upon one another, creating words that bypassed language entirely and implanted themselves directly into his mind. "You have disrupted the balance," the voice said, cold and unyielding. "This act cannot go unanswered." Kale's instincts screamed at him to attack, but something held him back, an invisible force pinning him in place. He glanced around, searching for support from the crowd or the officials, but found none. Instead, the spectators sat frozen, their expressions masks of terror. Even the cloaked figure who had watched him earlier had vanished, leaving no trace behind. Before Kale could respond, the crystalline veins running through the arena walls began to pulse erratically, their glow intensifying until it became almost blinding. The alien continued speaking, its tone unwavering. "The queen you have slain was more than your adversary. She was a guardian, bound to maintain equilibrium between realms. Her death has weakened the barrier separating our worlds. If left unchecked, chaos will spill forth, consuming all." A chill ran through Kale's veins as realization dawned. This wasn't just about politics or symbolism anymore, it was something far greater, something cosmic. And somehow, he had become entangled in it. The alien lowered its arm, and the oppressive pressure holding Kale in place dissipated. For a moment, silence reigned, broken only by the faint hum of the still active portal behind the creature. Then, without warning, the being extended its hand again, this time offering something small and metallic, a device shaped like a flattened sphere, etched with intricate glyphs that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles. "Take this," the voice commanded. "It is both a burden and a key. Use it wisely, for the path ahead demands sacrifices beyond measure." Reluctantly, Kale reached out and grasped the object. As soon as his fingers closed around it, visions flooded his mind. images of collapsing stars, fractured planets, and armies clashing under skies choked with ash. Among these scenes, he glimpsed fleeting moments of himself standing alone against overwhelming odds, wielding weapons forged from light and shadow. The visions ended abruptly, leaving him disoriented and breathless. When he looked up, the alien was gone, retreating into the portal which sealed itself shut with a deafening crack. The arena fell silent once more, save for the murmurs of confused onlookers beginning to stir from their stupor. Kale clenched the sphere tightly in his fist, feeling its surface grow warm against his palm. Whatever it was, it carried weight, not just physically, but metaphorically. It felt alive, pulsing faintly in rhythm with his heartbeat. But there was no time to process what had happened. Before he could gather his thoughts, a loud explosion rocked the arena, sending chunks of glowing crystal raining down from above. Chaos erupted instantly as panicked spectators scrambled to escape, trampling over one another in their desperation. Kale turned toward the source of the blast and saw a group of heavily armed mercenaries storming through a breached entrance, their weapons trained on the fleeing crowd. At their head stood a familiar face, one Kale recognized immediately despite years having passed since their last encounter. It was Rin Solis, a former comrade turned rogue operative whose name had become synonymous with betrayal across multiple star systems. Once a trusted ally during some of Kale's earliest missions, Rin had abandoned humanity after uncovering secrets too dangerous to ignore, or so the rumors went. Now, clad in sleek black armor adorned with insignias of unknown origin, she advanced confidently, her gaze locking onto Kale with predatory intent. "Didn't think we'd meet again under these circumstances, did you?" Rin called out, her voice carrying over the din of screams and collapsing structures. "Guess fate has a funny way of bringing old friends together." Kale tightened his grip on his sword, adrenaline surging anew. "What do you want, Rin? You're not here for nostalgia." She smirked, raising her weapon, a hybrid rifle pistol construct humming with unstable energy. "Let's just say I've got my own agenda. And lucky for me, it aligns perfectly with yours, whether you like it or not." Without waiting for a response, she fired a shot that narrowly missed Kale's head, forcing him to dive sideways. Debris scattered everywhere as the mercenaries unleashed a barrage of firepower, targeting both Kale and anyone foolish enough to remain in the vicinity. Amidst the carnage, Kale realized two things simultaneously. First, Rin knew something about the artifact now resting in his hand, and second, she intended to take it by force. Dodging blasts and scrambling for cover, Kale assessed his options. The arena was rapidly descending into pandemonium, with the structural integrity of the walls visibly weakening under sustained assault. Escape routes were closing fast, and reinforcements wouldn't arrive in time, not that he trusted anyone else to intervene given the stakes involved. His only advantage lay in the element of surprise. Few expected him to fight back while injured and outnumbered. Summoning every ounce of strength, Kale launched himself forward, using fallen debris as makeshift shields as he closed the distance between himself and Rin's squad. His blade sang through the air, cleaving through armor and flesh alike, leaving trails of sparks and blood in its wake. Each strike fueled his resolve, driving him deeper into the fray despite mounting injuries and exhaustion. Yet for every enemy he felled, another took their place, pressing him relentlessly toward the center of the arena where Rin awaited patiently, her expression unreadable. Finally breaking free of the encirclement, Kale locked eyes with her, panting heavily but refusing to yield. "You always were stubborn," Rin remarked casually, adjusting her aim. "But even you can't win this alone." Her words struck a nerve, forcing Kale to confront an uncomfortable truth. Despite his skill and determination, he couldn't hope to overcome such overwhelming odds indefinitely. Not unless... His thoughts were interrupted as a shadow loomed overhead. Looking up, he saw the cloaked figure from earlier descending gracefully from the stands, landing silently between him and Rin. The hood remained drawn, obscuring their identity, but there was no mistaking the aura of power radiating outward. In one fluid motion, the figure drew a weapon unlike anything Kale had seen before, a staff crowned with twin crescents of pale blue light that pulsed rhythmically, casting eerie reflections across the battlefield. Rin's confidence faltered for the first time, her smirk fading into a scowl. "Who are you?" she demanded, leveling her gun at the newcomer. The figure didn't respond verbally. Instead, they raised the staff, unleashing a burst of energy that sent shockwaves rippling outward, knocking mercenaries off their feet and sending Rin stumbling backward. Seizing the opportunity, Kale pressed his advantage, engaging the remaining foes with renewed ferocity. Together, the mysterious ally and Kale carved a path through the chaos, their movements synchronized as though guided by an unseen force. With each passing moment, the tide of battle shifted decisively in their favor. Yet even as victory seemed within reach, questions swirled in Kale's mind. Who was this enigmatic figure? What connection did they have to the artifact? And most importantly, why had they chosen to intervene now? As the final echoes of combat faded, Kale found himself standing alongside the stranger, surrounded by the wreckage of what had once been a grand arena. Breathing heavily, he turned to face them, gripping the sphere tightly as though it might provide answers. "I don't know who you are," he began, his voice hoarse but steady, "but I owe you my life. Tell me, what do you want?" For the first time, the figure pushed back their hood, revealing features that defied description. Their skin shimmered faintly, catching the light in ways that suggested it wasn't entirely solid. Eyes of liquid silver met Kale's gaze, filled with an intelligence ancient and vast. "I am neither friend nor foe," the figure replied, their voice layered with harmonics that resonated deep within Kale's chest. "I am merely a guide. The artifact you hold is older than the stars above us. It holds the power to reshape reality, but also the potential to destroy everything." Kale swallowed hard, feeling the weight of those words settle heavily upon him. "Then why give it to me? Why trust someone like me with something so dangerous?" The figure tilted their head slightly, as if considering the question. "Because choice is the essence of existence. Yours will determine the fate of countless lives, including your own." With that cryptic statement, they stepped back, vanishing into thin air without a sound. Left alone amidst the ruins, Kale stared at the sphere in his hand, knowing full well that whatever journey lay ahead would test him in ways he couldn't yet imagine.